Linus Pauling proved the combination of two simple minerals can determine the fate of your heart. He was a chemist whose vision stretched far beyond the confines of a laboratory bench. Linus Pauling, one of the few people ever to receive two unshared Nobel Prizes, altered our understanding of chemical bonds, shaped molecular biology, and then leaped into the fray of nutritional science. While many hailed him as a genius in theoretical chemistry, Pauling also believed that everyday minerals and vitamins exert a deep influence on human health. Among his more provocative assertions was that two common minerals, when taken in the right proportions, could decide the long-term destiny of your heart. Skeptics scoffed, but Pauling persisted, gathering evidence and advocating for a more nuanced understanding of how these elements help maintain cardiovascular function. By the end of this narrative, an unexpected twist will link chemistry and well-being in ways you may never have imagined. From his early days, Pauling displayed an unrelenting curiosity about the building blocks of matter. Born in Portland, Oregon, in 1901, he devoured science books while still a child, conducting makeshift experiments in his basement. Even as a youngster, he was taken with the idea that the properties of everyday substances could illuminate the grandest mysteries of life. After enrolling at Oregon Agricultural College, now Oregon State University, he rapidly advanced through his studies in chemical engineering. Soon enough, he ventured to California Institute of Technology, where his groundbreaking work on the nature of chemical bonds eventually garnered international acclaim. But it was in the 1960s and 1970s, when Pauling was already a towering figure in chemistry, that he began to pivot toward nutritional science. At that time, his vocal support for high-dose vitamin C sparked public interest and professional controversy alike. Some doctors applauded his theories, others criticized them as overblown. Unfazed, Pauling doubled down, pointing to studies that, in his eyes, demonstrated the profound impact of micronutrients on immune function. Yet beyond vitamin C, Pauling quietly studied the body's relationship to minerals. He believed minerals were the unsung heroes of cellular processes. From regulating enzyme activity to stabilizing heartbeats, these inorganic elements, like magnesium, potassium, calcium, iron, and so forth, determined whether our bodies ran smoothly or succumbed to chronic ailments. Through countless hours of reading scientific journals, analyzing data, and, in some cases, commissioning small studies, Pauling became convinced that two specific minerals, common yet often overlooked, could profoundly sway the trajectory of cardiovascular health. The first mineral, magnesium, was already recognized for its role in over 300 enzymatic reactions. Pauling noted that magnesium helps maintain proper muscle and nerve function, stabilizes heart rhythm, and even influences blood pressure regulation. In populations where magnesium intake was higher, often due to diets rich in dark leafy greens, nuts, seeds, and whole grains, incidences of heart disease appeared lower. Pauling also learned that magnesium aided in calcium metabolism, ensuring that this other mineral wound up in bones rather than in arteries, where calcification can lead to dangerous blockages. And that other mineral? Potassium, found abundantly in fruits like bananas, avocados, and citrus, as well as in vegetables, beans, and nuts. Potassium regulates fluid balance and counters the effects of sodium. High sodium intake is linked to hypertension. Potassium, by contrast, helps lower blood pressure, easing the stress on arterial walls. In multiple epidemiological studies, people who consumed more potassium had reduced stroke rates and fewer cardiac arrhythmias. That synergy, potassium's ability to temper sodium's effects, plus magnesium's role in muscle integrity and enzyme function, captivated Pauling. He hypothesized that if magnesium and potassium levels were optimized, the heart could operate more efficiently, staving off conditions like hypertension, arrhythmia, and even atherosclerosis. Of course, the question arises, how did Pauling prove this synergy? The word prove in science is always contentious, since absolute proof is rare. But Pauling felt the accumulating data from multiple lines of research made a compelling case. He pointed to population studies in places like Okinawa or certain Mediterranean regions, where diets naturally high in magnesium and potassium were linked to unusually low heart disease rates. Moreover, he gleaned from clinical investigations that individuals with even mild deficiencies in these minerals displayed elevated risks of arrhythmias, muscle cramps, and high blood pressure. He distilled his views into articles, interviews, and lectures, cautioning that the modern Western diet, heavy in processed foods, often lacks these crucial minerals. Excessive refining strips away magnesium and potassium from grains. Diets loaded with salty snacks elevate sodium levels while leaving the other electrolytes comparatively low. Pauling insisted that this imbalance set the stage for vascular stress, arterial stiffening, and eventually heart disease. He used an analogy. Think of your cardiovascular system as a finely tuned orchestra. Magnesium and potassium are instruments that keep the tempo and harmony stable. Remove them, or let them go out of tune, and the entire symphony degenerates into chaos. At first, many mainstream cardiologists were skeptical. They accepted that magnesium and potassium were important, but balked at Pauling's bold claims about how decisive these minerals could be in determining the fate of one's heart. Yet as time progressed, more nuanced research emerged. A variety of clinical studies confirmed the link between low magnesium levels and heart arrhythmias, particularly atrial fibrillation. Another cluster of trials showed that potassium supplementation, especially in hypertensive individuals, could help modestly lower blood pressure. Over decades, the medical community moved closer to Pauling's stance, adopting guidelines that emphasize adequate potassium intake and monitoring magnesium status in patients with cardiovascular issues. But how did Pauling respond to critics who accused him of oversimplifying heart disease, which arises from multiple factors like genetics, cholesterol, lifestyle, and inflammation? Pauling conceded that minerals were not the sole key to heart health. However, he believed ignoring them was a grave oversight, akin to ignoring the foundation of a building while focusing on design aesthetics. He argued that no matter how well you manage cholesterol or blood glucose, if your cells lack the essential minerals that stabilize metabolic function, your cardiovascular system remains at risk. Late in his life, Pauling published essays explaining how magnesium and potassium interplay with other nutrients, such as calcium and vitamin D. He championed the concept of orthomolecular medicine, which sought to achieve optimal molecular concentrations of substances naturally present in the body. In that framework, magnesium and potassium were pivotal pillars, some of the most critical molecules we must keep in check. Naturally, people asked him, if these minerals are so decisive, do we just pop supplements? Or do we rely on food? Pauling recommended a food-first approach whenever possible. He extolled the virtues of a diet replete with leafy greens, spinach, kale, legumes, lentils, beans, nuts, seeds, and certain fruits, bananas, apricots, avocados. He believed whole foods provided these minerals in synergy with vitamins, fiber, and beneficial plant compounds, thus amplifying their heart protective effects. Still, for those with deficiencies, he considered targeted supplementation a potential ally. In interviews near the end of his career, Pauling beamed with excitement at how nutritional science was evolving. The same fervor he once devoted to molecular bonds now fueled his research on how daily dietary choices shape biological processes. Some journalists were amused by a shift from the theoretical realm to the practical. But Pauling saw no contradiction. Whether mapping electron orbitals or analyzing mineral metabolism, he was decoding fundamental truths about how matter behaves, a consistency of viewpoint bridging the microcosm of chemistry to the macrocosm of human health. Here is where the twist arrives. You see, Pauling did not merely rely on data from external studies. He also experimented on himself. Those close to him recall he meticulously recorded his own dietary habits, including daily intake of magnesium and potassium. He measured his blood pressure, noted any palpitations, and even arranged for periodic EKG checks. Over time, as he adjusted his diet to balance these minerals, he noted improvements in his stamina and blood pressure readings. Though never an athlete, he felt more energetic during lectures and conferences. He lived to the age of 93, outlasting many peers, and though genetics and other factors certainly contributed, he believed his deliberate nutritional strategies played a significant role in maintaining vigor. People often asked him whether focusing on minerals overshadowed the role of vitamins, or whether simple lifestyle choices like exercise and stress management were equally important. Pauling wholeheartedly acknowledged the holistic picture. He viewed minerals as a foundational layer, but not the entire structure. He urged people to remain active, manage stress, and maintain healthy relationships. He also recognized the interplay between micronutrients. Too much of one mineral could disrupt the absorption of another. Balance was the ultimate principle. In modern times, subsequent research has validated many facets of Pauling's perspective. For example, a 2016 meta-analysis found that ensuring adequate magnesium intake reduced the risk of stroke, while other reviews indicated that diets high in potassium correlate with lower rates of high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease. Physicians commonly advise patients with heart arrhythmias or those on diuretics to monitor potassium and magnesium levels. The synergy that Pauling espoused, particularly for heart muscle contraction, blood pressure regulation, and vascular integrity, seems more relevant than ever in an age of processed foods. Now, ask yourself a question that resonates with Pauling's legacy. How often do you consider your magnesium or potassium intake in your daily routine? Our kitchens are stocked with salt and sugar, but do we pay attention to the seeds, nuts, beans, and fresh produce that might be fueling the very core of our heart's resilience? If you've never thought about it, perhaps now is the time to reflect on how easily one can slip into a deficiency, especially if fast food or convenience meals dominate your diet. Share your thoughts in the comments if you wish. One might think, but can it really be that simple? 2 minerals to help decide the fate of my heart. Pauling would remind us that simplicity in one sense can mask complexity in another. While magnesium and potassium are indeed simple in their elemental forms, their roles in the body are remarkably intricate, affecting everything from DNA replication to nerve signal transmission. The slightest imbalance might tip the scales toward hypertension, arrhythmias, or metabolic dysfunction. Conversely, restoring that balance could tilt your physiology back toward health, mitigating risk factors for serious conditions. During one speech, Pauling employed a memorable analogy. Imagine trying to orchestrate a complex piece of music with an out-of-tune piano and a malfunctioning metronome. No matter how talented the musician, the performance suffers. In the body, magnesium might be akin to tuning your instrument, ensuring enzymatic reactions produce the right notes, while potassium is the metronome, stabilizing the rhythm of your heartbeat. When they work in harmony, your cardiovascular performance flows naturally. When one or both are off, the entire arrangement can falter. In the latter years of his life, Pauling's focus on micronutrients expanded beyond just heart health. He investigated how vitamins and minerals might also influence immunity, bone density, and even cognitive function. Still, he often circled back to the heart as a prime example of how these seemingly innocuous elements can shape longevity. Although many in the medical community eventually embraced his enthusiasm for magnesium and potassium, they preferred to present it in cautious terms, citing guidelines about recommended dietary allowances. Pauling, more daring, exclaimed that if the entire population consistently met adequate levels, we might witness a substantial drop in heart disease cases. It was a hallmark of his style. Bold predictions anchored by a mountain of data and an unshakable conviction in orthomolecular principles. While some might question whether reality would truly match the scale of Pauling's optimism, the subsequent decades have shown that ensuring robust mineral intake is indeed a core recommendation for patients at risk of cardiovascular disease. Public health campaigns now highlight potassium's blood pressure benefits and magnesium's protective role. In a sense, Pauling's proof, though never cast as a single, definitive clinical trial, has become woven into contemporary nutritional wisdom. Let us pause for another question. Do you recall any personal experiences where changing your diet, specifically regarding magnesium or potassium, made a noticeable difference in how you felt? be it fewer muscle cramps, lower blood pressure, or reduced heart palpitations. Feel free to share your story in the comments. Such anecdotes, Pauling believed, provided real-world validation for the theories gleaned from lab studies and academic research. Stepping back, we see a larger narrative. Linus Pauling started as a chemist unraveling the quantum underpinnings of chemical bonds, then evolved into a champion for nutritional awareness, bridging molecular science with everyday living. His tale underscores that the chasms we perceive between hard science and personal health might not be so wide after all. Indeed, the same meticulous thinking that explained how electrons orbit atomic nuclei could also reveal how certain minerals orbit the heart's functional demands. Through it all, Pauling remained unwavering in his conviction that if we truly appreciate the body's molecular architecture, we can take more precise, proactive steps to preserve health. The fate of your heart, he believed, hinged not just on intangible factors like genetics or luck, but on tangible, quantifiable elements like magnesium and potassium that are easily manipulated through diet and supplementation. As you consider these insights, it might be worth reviewing your own diet or daily habits. Foods such as spinach, nuts, seeds, beans, lentils, bananas, potatoes, avocados, and even dark chocolate, rich in magnesium, all stand as pillars of this mineral synergy. For many, small increments in the consumption of these foods can tip the balance from borderline deficiency to robust adequacy, potentially altering health trajectories in subtle but meaningful ways. Of course, one must also be mindful that too much of a good thing can be harmful. Oversupplementing potassium or magnesium can pose its own risks, especially for individuals with kidney issues or other medical conditions. Pauling, aware of this nuance, never advocated blind megadosing without understanding one's unique situation. His approach echoed a core scientific principle: measure, adjust, measure again. In conclusion, Linus Pauling's assertion that the combination of two simple minerals can determine the fate of your heart might sound grandiose, yet behind it lies a wealth of data and a lifetime of exploration. He saw magnesium and potassium as two critical levers in the grand machinery of life, each with the power to keep your heart beating steadily through decades of existence. When harnessed wisely, primarily through a diet that cherishes whole, unrefined foods, these elements can help maintain healthy blood pressure, stable rhythm, and overall cardiovascular resilience. And so, the unexpected twist is that the same mind that once deciphered molecular bonds and championed a revolutionary view of vitamins also found its way to championing humble minerals. In the end, Pauling's career reminds us that scientific genius need not remain cloistered in arcane theory. It can, instead, illuminate practical steps we can all take daily. However small they may seem, these steps, like ensuring we get enough magnesium and potassium, might just shape our heart's destinies for years to come. Now, take a moment to reflect. If you were to integrate more magnesium and potassium-rich foods into your diet for the next month, how do you imagine it could affect your energy, mood, or cardiovascular well-being? Share your intentions or predictions in the comments. You might find that, as Pauling suggested, such small shifts in molecular intake can yield surprisingly significant changes, enough to steer the fate of your heart toward a more harmonious future.